Welcome to the full Hearthstone dictionary. Today we're going to explain to you all the terminology and lingo that Hearthstone players throw around sometimes that you, as a new player, returning player, beginner, need to know about the game to understand what the hell people are talking about. So the very first thing that is thrown around a lot is the word meta. What does the word meta mean? Meta game. The meta basically means what's up right now, what's popular, what are people playing currently, what's having success, and a very good site to see the meta is HS Replay. We're on it right now, and we're sorting by meta. You can see all decks that are currently being played and are popular listed by win rate. At the very top, you can see the best decks in Tier 1, Tier 2. That's how it's sorted. So Secret Hunter, Mech Hunter, and basically all of Tier 1 and Tier 2 decks would for the most part be considered the meta. The meta decks, the competitive decks, the successful decks, and the decks that you're going to be running into when you're playing for the most part. Next we have the word net decking. Net decking basically just means you're being very uncreative. JJ, can you demonstrate the process of net decking for us?
Certainly can.
As you can see, JJ is on the net right now, and he's currently decking TrashcanTV's own Budget Druid deck from the net into the game. He's going to create a new deck with the code that he just copied off of the net. And there's his deck. JJ just net duck. That's not the correct word, but JJ just, yeah, that's net decking. And a lot of people complain about it, but usually if you're gonna be reasonable, you understand that that's what most people do, and that's how the meta works. Not everyone is gonna create their own game, and if they're their meta game, and if you don't have that much experience and that much knowledge, especially if you're a beginner, there's no shame in taking some inspiration from other people's decks. That's what we're doing the budget series for, and that's what other people are publishing deck lists and doing rankings for, as an orientation for other people. So net decking, completely fine. Some people don't like it, but that's how it works. So let's get into the collection. We have, first of all, the term constructed. Constructed just refers to as playing with a deck that you personally built. Net decking also includes constructed, by the way, as opposed to playing the arena, in which game mode the cards are drafted. In constructed, you get to build the entire deck. And in this case, it's what basically shows up when you're in the collection. That's all your decks that you have constructed. That's what constructed means. Next, we have tribe. A tribe is basically the group or the race that a minion belongs to. For example, we have right there, the Angry Chicken is a beast. The bottom text on the line right there, Botsa Corsair, a pirate. Those are tribes. The Mech, Faithful Lumi. There's others. There's Murlocs, there's dragons. There's a lot of different tribes, and those tribes work with each other. Usually, or oftentimes, several cards from the same tribe work better with each other, and we're going to get into that as we're going to see later in the gameplay, but that's a tribe. Next, we have the word vanilla, and a vanilla minion is generally a minion with no text. For example, you can see the Bloodfen Raptor. We generally say vanilla stats about a minion that has the appropriate amount of stat line for its cost. For example, their Arcane Servant, the 2 mana, 2/3 is a very vanilla stat line, as is the 3/2. That's vanilla. And then you see cards like right there, the Amani Berserker, for example, is a 2 mana, 2/3 with a text, with a favorable text. So in general, we'd say that Amani Berserker is a better card than the Arcane Servant. The most famous vanilla cards in the game, probably Chillwind Yeti and Boulderfist Ogre. If you want to look at those, there's Chillwind Yeti right there, the face of vanilla, and there's Boulderfist Ogre. Both vanilla cards, vanilla stats. That's what vanilla means. Because it's basic, and vanilla is a basic ice cream flavor, I guess. Alright, next word is curve. What do we mean when we refer to a curve? What you can see on the screen right now, the cards to mana cost ratio in a diagram right there, that's what we refer to as the curve. And from the curve of a deck, we can have a lot of conclusions as to what this deck is supposed to do. For example, in this case, the deck has a lot of early drops. It peaks at 3, it has a lot of 0, 1, and 2, and 3 cost cards, and doesn't have that many expensive cards. So this deck would probably tend to play rather aggressively because it can play its cards early. That's what the curve means. In constructed as an arena, you want to keep a balanced curve in order to have a versatile deck. And as we're talking about curve, we're going to look into some deck ideas / archetypes. And first we have aggro. Aggro basically just means you're playing aggressively, which means you'll have a lot of small Small minions, you're going to flood the board. This Murloc Shaman is a very, very good example for that. You can show the curve of again. This is a curve indicative of aggro play. A lot of cheap cards that we're trying to get out very, very soon. And an aggro deck aims to kill the opponent very, very quickly on the board with a lot of pressure. Kind of on the same token, we have the word zoo. Now, zoo is basically these days referred to as an aggro deck, mostly used for warlocks. It basically just refers to a lot of small minions. That's what a zoo basically means. These days, you can see there the curve very, very extreme. These days, zoo usually means this sort of a warlock with a lot of small minions, a lot of demons, and a lot of attack buffing. It's a very aggressive deck that plays a lot of small minions. Now, tempo is both a deck idea as well as a concept in-game. In the deck idea, we're generally talking about board advantage. When you hear the word tempo, we're talking about board advantage, development advantage. If you're familiar, for example, with the game of chess, you can be up in development. And in chess, it's also called a tempo. If you're up development, you're up a tempo. And similar things apply in Hearthstone because it's a very strategic game as well. Tempo, for example, if you can make a play that both puts something on the board for you and also kills a minion from your opponent at the same time. Cards like SI7 Agent, very, very good example for that. You're making a so-called tempo swing because you're taking the initiative on the board. Tempo is one of the absolute key aspects in Hearthstone, and a deck like this Tempo Rogue specifically focuses on winning the tempo game and then overwhelming your opponent. Not quite as aggressive as Aggro, still on the faster side, and that's Tempo. Now, mid-range is sort of the best of both worlds. We've played a lot of mid-range hunters. That's arguably the class that's most famous for having the mid-range archetype run. It's a deck that can both put on pressure in the early game, have a very balanced curve, as JJ can show. You see it right there. 2, 3, and 4 drops are usually the focus of the mid-range deck, but it also has late-game potential, using some very, very strong cards. In this case, you look at Zul'jin. Of course, Hunter used to have the Deathstalker Rexar, which was the greatest late-game card in the game. And mid-range is the best of both worlds. It can do everything, and usually has very balanced win rates. Control is the other deck idea, and Control is basically the opposite to Aggro. We're going from fast to slow, and Control tries to win the late game with a lot of value. Value just meaning you have cards like Dr. Boom right there, Archivist Elysiana, stuff that creates you a lot of new extra cards. You have expensive cards with expensive but powerful effects. And Control is trying to win in the long game, to have more resources than fast decks. So if a Control deck were to face off against an Aggro deck, the Aggro deck will try to kill the Control deck really quickly, but if they don't manage to do that, then the Control deck will win. Control decks usually have a lot of removal, which means cards that will remove minions from the board. They like to control the board and like to play the slow game and play defensively. That's Control. And finally, we have Combo, an idea of a deck that has very much died out since the last rotation, unfortunately, some people might say, and some people might be happy about it. But before that, Control used to be very, very important. Combo, sorry. Before that, Combo used to be very, very important and very prevalent in the meta game. A combo deck basically aims to do a large amount of damage and usually pull off a specific combo in 1 or maybe 2 individual turns, and thereby kill your opponent like that. Malygos Druid is one of those combo decks. Now, Malygos Druid is neither really Control nor is it Aggro. The idea is, in this deck, for example, to play Malygos. Hopefully even 2 Malygos, because you have the possibility to duplicate it. Faces Manipulator, and once you play that, you want to put damaging spells like the Moonfire and like the Swipes to the opponent's face. Just imagine 2 Malygos on the board, all your spells got spell damage plus 10, 2 Swipes and a Moonfire, or maybe 2 Moonfires. That's enough damage to kill the opponent in 1 turn. There used to be much more aggressive combo decks, like the Mechathune Druid out, but combo these days is not that prevalent anymore. Some people like it, some don't. But that's basically what the archetype of combo means. Now we're getting into some of the old school deck ideas that aren't prevalent anymore, specifically because they relied on specific cards. Highlander is the first one. You still might hear it every once in a while. And if you've been around the block a couple times, you know that this sort of deck, not this deck, but the idea of the Highlander Priest used to be huge back in the day. And Highlander, JJ, you know that reference. You know where that comes from. Would you like to make the grand appearance and tell us why stuff is called Highlander?
Well, it comes from the TV show and movie series Highlander, which has the catchphrase, "There can only be one."
There can only be one. And if you have a look at this deck, you will know this, that every single card shows up only once. Now, JJ threw this together. This is by no means a playable deck, but you have cards like this Reno Jackson. You have other cards like the Kazakas, like the Raza the Chained, which are no longer in standard, but they used to be played together in a deck like this that gain special effects as battle cries if the deck doesn't contain any dupes. So Highlander used to be a thing, now not anymore because there really ain't any support cards for it in standard. But that's where that phrasing comes from. And next, we have the term Exodia. Now, JJ, you again can probably explain where exactly the term Exodia stems from.
Well, Exodia comes from Yu-Gi-Oh! Where there is 5 cards that basically build Exodia, the Forbidden One. If you have all 5 cards on your hand, you instantly win the game.
A lot of combo decks also deploy the idea of Exodia, meaning to immediately kill your opponent with one strike. And one of those Exodia decks, probably the most famous one, is the one that this gentleman on the screen right now enables, which is the Mage, the Antonidas Mage, Exodia Mage usually referred to because that's what the deck does. The idea is you play a lot of Sorcerer's Apprentices. They reduce the cost of spells in your hand by 1. You play 4 of them to be exact, and then you play a spell. And Antonidas on the board, usually that takes 2 turns, but with some cost reduction and a duplication, you can manage to pull it off in 1 turn. And once you do that, you can play 3 fireballs, and fireball does 6 damage, and it costs 0, and you get another one because you just play the fireball, and you can do essentially infinite damage in 1 turn. That's the idea of Exodia. It's tough to pull off, but when you do, it's unbeatable. Speaking of Antonidas, is not necessarily a card that I like a lot, because I personally do not enjoy playing against Exodia decks at all. So, what do we do to cards that we hate? We dust them. Now, dusting basically just is another word for disenchanting, because you disenchant them and then you get dust. JJ just dusted Archmage Antonidas. I personally am happy about it. Some might not agree with that decision. Obviously, he's gonna undo it, obviously, but that's what dusting means. There you go. Also, dusting is often referred to as pushing the button, but specifically, pushing the button means if you go into crafting and you go to disenchant extra cards, you have all the cards that you can possibly dust without losing any copies of them in one thing. And for some reason, right, don't even ask me, but in the community, it's become a thing for people to collect loads and loads of dupe cards and then dust them all at the same time. And then they title their YouTube videos Pushing the Button. So that's what pushing the button apparently stands for. So this ominous disenchant button right there is the button. Next we have the word tech. Now this is also one that we hear a lot, and a lot of people don't necessarily know what it means. Tech stands for a card that you tech into a deck in order to respond to a specific thing. Tech cards usually pop up and then go down again with the shifting metas, and one of the prime examples is this little oozy boy right there, Acidic Swamp Ooze, destroy your opponent's weapon. If the meta is very, very prevalent on weapons, like it for example was during the Kobolds and Catacombs when all legendary weapons were around, or is to a degree also now with Spectral Cutlass, Wrench Caliber, in the Rogue and prevalent Rogue and Warrior decks, and even to a degree the Lickham in the Shaman, then cards like this, or like Harrison Jones, also a very famous face of weapons tech, will become important. Another one that we could show off is Hungry Crab, tech against Murloc specifically. If the meta is very Murloc heavy, Hungry Crab just might win you the game, because if you can destroy a Murloc and gain +2/+2, then that's a big blank swing, JJ.
Board swing.
Tempo swing is what I wanted to hear there. JJ has not been paying attention throughout this.
It does swing the board.
It does swing the board. It's a tempo swing. And the tech cards, that's what it's used for. Another one would be the Black Knight. Classic card, always shows up when it's important to kill some taunt minions. For example, when the Lich King was around last rotation during the Frozen Throne days, the Black Knight was ran in a lot of control decks as a tech against specifically the Lich King or other very powerful taunt cards. So I hope you get an understanding of what tech means, a card you specifically put into a deck, into a sort of an open slot to fight one very specific thing that you're expecting your opponent or a lot of your opponents to be playing. And last but not least, we'd be remiss to not talk about Reggie. Now, Reggie is sort of a TrashcanTV original, and it refers to Ragnaros the Fire Lord. often also called Rag by the community for some reason. That's usually how people shorten his name. But personally, we are petitioning for the name Reggie to become prevalent as the nickname for Ragnaros the Fire Lord, one of the most iconic characters in Warcraft and definitely in Hearthstone, one of the best cards they ever printed, and a very important part of Hearthstone history. Please support the cause by using the name Reggie instead, because ask yourself, what sounds cooler, Rag or Reggie? For a guy who's the Fire Lord and Ragnaros, and he deals 8? I believe Reggie is the better name, so that's just a little bit of pushing our own agenda there, but we're going to hop into a game and figure out the rest of the words. First word we have is the ladder, and the ladder just refers to ranked play. Why? Because, well, it's sort of like a ladder. You're trying to climb up the ranks, correct? Up to legend, and legend is the top of the ladder. So that's what we call the ladder. Let's get into a game. So the first word that we are looking at today is the mulligan. Now, the mulligan is not a Hearthstone exclusive term. It basically means a redo, and the mulligan comes up right in the opening hand. The starting hand, you get a choice to keep or replace some cards. So JJ, for example, is choosing to mulligan the Fireball and the Ancient Brewmaster. That's his mulligan. That's what we refer to as the mulligan. There you go. That whole process, and now the game starts. Another word that we have been looking at is drop. Now, drop basically just refers to as a card played on the turn that its mana cost works. In this case, I have a very good 1-drop in the Murloc Tidecaller right there. It's a 1-drop. It's a minion, a body that I put on the board. Very simple. It's a drop. Next thing, we have the word tutor. Tutor refers to a card that draws you not just a card, but draws you specific cards. Very strong example historically for that would be Yusi Psych Melon. In this case, I'm playing the card Crystology right there. It says draw 2 1-attack minions. Not just draw 2 cards, 2 1-attack minions. It tutors specific cards that I want. Next word we have ping, also sometimes referred to as poke or punch, basically meaning dealing 1 damage to something. In this case, JJ is about to ping this Murloc with his hero power. Often the word ping is used specifically to refer to the mage hero power because it deals 1 damage. But it can also happen with, for example, poking someone with your rogue dagger, or punching someone with the druid hero power, or using cards like the elven archer to deal 1 damage to remove a divine shield, or deal the extra damage to kill something. That's what pinging is. What JJ is also doing, because I'm talking so long, is roping, another word we've been talking about. You can see the rope burning off. When you take too long to take your turn and it ends, you're roping. That's what it means. And when the rope runs out, it automatically goes to your opponent's turn in case you haven't never encountered them. Exactly. You roped out. In this case, that happened. Next word is synergy. I talked about tribes when we were in the collection. I specifically talked about Murlocs, and I was talking about how they get strong together. And you can see me playing those 3 Murlocs right there, and look at what they're doing. Some very, very strong Murlocs indeed. They're synergizing off of each other and buffing each other's attack. That's what we refer to as synergy. Here we got 2 more things. First of all, to coin. To coin. Refers to just playing the coin. Yeah, also often coining, if someone says, I'm coining, he's coining. And right now he's coining out a specific card, which is Blizzard. Blizzard. Which is what we call an AoE, which stands for Area of Effect. Area of Effect. Which means it affects multiple and oftentimes every enemy minion. In this case, yeah. In this case, all of them. It freezes them, deals damage, AoE. Very, very strong tool, often used by control decks, as we referred to in the beginning, to defeat aggro decks like this. So next one is Dude, specific to the Paladin class. A Dude is, well, this dude. A Silverhand Recruit is referred to as a Dude. Why? It's a vanilla minion, it's a 1/1, it's just a guy, so it's a Dude. There used to be an archetype called Dude Paladin a couple of months ago, I want to say half a year. What I also did right there with the Blessing of Might is buffing my Dude. I just buffed its attack. That means you increase the stats on the minion. You buff it. You can buff someone's health, you can buff someone's attack. In this case, I buffed my 1/1 Dude to a 4/1 Dude. Next, JJ is going to be showing off Bounce. Bounce refers to returning a minion from your battlefield back to your hand. In this case, he's bouncing this panda from the battlefield, from the board, back to his hand. Often or usually employed by rogues with cards like Shadow Stab, Daring Escape, and the Waggle Pick. Bouncing is usually done in order to get a minion back to your hand that has a positive battle cry, and to be able to get it off multiple times. So remember the word tech. JJ's tech of Hungry Grab right now is paying off as you can tech against this Murloc. That was Murloc tech, and that's how it works in-game, and it could provide you a very good...
Tempo swing.
Tempo swing. In this case, it did. Cycling. As you can see the card on the board, Gadget's an Auctioneer, notorious for cycling. Whenever you cast a spell, draw a card. Cycling means replacing a card with another card, usually or actually always by drawing it. He plays a spell, he draws another card. He plays a spell, he draws another card. He is cycling through his deck right now. This is often utilized by combo decks that have a specific win condition that want to get their entire hand off. And Gadget's an Auctioneer, cycling, very, very good tool.
One other concept, and I think this is kind of the most abstract one we had in here, is the idea of a line of play.
Yep.
Which is basically just the thought process and then the execution of this exact thing that you're going to do. So, for example, I can just decide to hit all of my minions into his face to produce as much damage as possible because I'm currently at a higher health total, with the idea that he is then forced to remove my minions, and I hopefully still have enough damage to kill him next turn.
Exactly. So line of play, if you've ever played games like poker or chess, you're thinking of lines of the future plays. You're calculating through turns, evaluating the outcomes, and then deciding on the line of play the sort of variant, the direction that you want the game to go in. So what is your line of play?
I'm going to hit your hero, which is also referred to as hitting the face.
Yep.
Or going face.
Or more importantly, that's not the key term, smorking.
Yeah. And by ignoring everything on the board and just kind of blindly hitting him in the face, that is referred to as smorking.
Smorking. Usually done by hunters. That's what we mean when we say smork. We ignore any trades, we just hit face, and we play aggro. Alright, the next concept is mill. Mill is also somewhat of a strategy in a deck. The idea of milling means burning opponent's cards, and burning cards means you overdrawing. You have the maximum hand size of 10 cards. As you can see right now, I have 10 cards on my hand. JJ, you can show that off. My hand has 10 cards, which means if I drew another one, it would get burned. It would show up and then be completely destroyed. And JJ now is going to mill me by playing a research project, which allows both players to draw 2 cards. He's also going to mill himself, I believe, but he's milling me. He's destroying my deck, taking cards away from me. And some decks utilize that strategy as a win condition, as winning by fatigue. So I burn cards through him milling me. That's what that terminology refers to. The next word that we have is the word lethal. As you can see, JJ has a lot of board presence here. I can try to go on ahead and play off some secrets. I'm going to try to do everything I can. I can take a trade, but it's probably not going to help me. I'm at 10 health. JJ has way more attack than that on the board, which means that JJ now has lethal. Lethal meaning you can kill your opponent. Lethal is what you want. In this case, JJ is going to hit my face, and he's going to win because he has lethal damage, as we refer to. And because JJ is a good sport, I'm going to challenge him to a rematch. Do you accept?
I accept.
Let's play. The next thing that we want to talk to you about is a misplay. Now, it's kind of hard to intentionally misplay, but misplaying means making a play that you shouldn't have done because you either miscalculated, or in the case that is going to happen to JJ right now, he had a mouse slip. In this case, he's like, oh, I'm going to ping the Murloc for sure, but oh, my mouse slipped, oh, and I pung myself in the face. That was a misplay. And what do you do if you have a misplay like that? You shame concede another turn. He isn't lost by any means, but he's so ashamed of what he just did, he shame concedes. And what do you do, especially after you just shame conceded? You go on tilt. To close off our final word for today, tilting just basically means raging, being triggered, being on tilt. You're angry, you're usually swearing. JJ, do you want to demonstrate it? No, that's good. If you need more exposition on tilt, go watch Kriparian playing Hearthstone.
Yes.
Shout out, but it is true. So, that is the full Hearthstone dictionary. Hope you all learned something today. Let us know your favorite terminology, and if you have heard any other words in connection with Hearthstone that we did not explain, that you do not understand, feel free to let us know in the comments of this video, or join our Discord server, or both. You can join our Discord server, link is in the description. You can talk to us, ask us questions directly, as well as the community that's already in there, which is the greatest community in the world. Anyway, TrashcanTV Discord, funnest place to be, funnest virtual place to be in the world. Talk some Hearthstone and get better together. So I hope you learned something today. Any questions, let us know. And thank you for watching. JJ.
That's it.
That's it.